Welcome everybody. We got a full house tonight. Full house. So we're going to give everybody a minute or two to get settled. We'll start with some kind of housekeeping stuff. We'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll get into I think some fun content. We got some fun things to talk about tonight. This can be one of the more rewarding parts of this very difficult, tumultuous process, especially if we do it right. So that's our goal. So like I said, give me just a minute or two, get everybody, get your beer, get your glass of wine, whatever's your pleasure, get comfortable. And then we'll roll about, let's see, it's 6:31. Let's call it 6:32. We'll get cooking. Okay, let's at least get started with some of the basics here before, and I'm sure we get a lot of Zoom and virtual webinar veterans by now on here. I'm Matt Carpenter. That's Fitz Totten. We're each going to introduce ourselves in a little bit more elaborate fashion in a couple minutes, but a few things just out of the gates. Everybody that registered, you're going to get the recording of tonight. So if you're kind of in and out, don't worry about it. You got to cut out early. You're going to get the entire recording. You'll get the whole deck. So you get the presentation itself. We'll make sure that we send that off tomorrow. Like I said, we have an awful lot of folks in the house tonight. We're going to do our very best to get the questions in real time. So we're each going to be taking the mic at different times here. Whichever one of us is not speaking, we'll be banging away at the keyboard, making sure that we're answering as many questions as humanly possible. I'm going to put it out there right now. We can't be stumped. Between the two of us, you're not going to stump us. I welcome, we welcome the challenge there. But if we get repeated questions or if we think it's a great time to interject, we'll go ahead and interrupt each other and throw it in there. And to that end, please do us a favor, do yourselves a favor. Any questions that you have, put them in the Q&A as opposed to the chat, because that gets recorded. So anybody that couldn't make it tonight, or if you forgot something tomorrow, you're going to have that all transcribed and included as part of the presentation. So please, any questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. Now, let me break let me kind of just be, let me go against what I just said for a second here. Curious to see who showed up tonight. I know we have mostly parents of class 2022. If you're a parent, throw your student's class out there. If you're a student, throw your class out there, high school graduating class 2022, I know is most of you, but if you're willing to, throw that in the chat. If you're a guidance counselor, we get a lot of guidance counselors that like to hear what we're doing, that are always trying to learn, and a lot of IECs, the independent education consultant. So if you're up for identifying yourself and both questions and these things in the chat, you can be anonymous, right? So if you have a really personal question or something that you're going to divulge something about your financial information or your appeal, no big deal. Just you can ask that in the Q&A anonymously. But just kind of curious to see who's in the house tonight, and appreciate the feedback. And looks like as we kind of expected here, a whole bunch of parents and primarily class 2022, and primarily that's who we're speaking to. So that's we found each other here. Now, what I did was I bugged or my team bugged just about everybody, and I'm gonna pop this into the chat here. I think we bugged most, if not all of you, to create an account at MyCap. I'll put it in here right now. mycap.collegeaidpro.com. The reason why we wanted you to create an account before tonight, which I just do in chat, is because one of the first things that we like to do is figure out, did I get a good award? Is this fair? Is it terrible? Is it great? And that allows you to fact check it. So you can find out right away, is this a good award, right? It doesn't, even if it's a good award, doesn't mean we're not going to appeal and negotiate for more money and hopefully do it successfully. But that can be a great truth and a great kind of foundation as you start the process. And the other thing we're going to help you with, for those of you that have received awards to date, if you're not confused by them, you're in the minority, right? These things are it's like they're in a different language. So we want to help you with that as well. And part of our platform allows you to upload your awards, and we can check them on our end to help you figure out, is this a loan? Is it a scholarship? Is this a need-based grant, et cetera? So we're getting great participation out of the gates, which I love. Without further ado, We're here to teach you, once you get these awards from these colleges, how do we go back to them and get more money? The reason why I'm especially excited is because we've been seeking Fitz out for quite a while now. Fitz is a little bit of a unicorn in our ecosystem, in this industry, in my opinion, because he's been on both sides of the fence. So he worked at some of the most prestigious colleges in the country. He can share them if he wants. He's also consulted with quite literally hundreds of colleges. So he's been in that room. So in some ways, it's not like we're against the colleges by any stretch, obviously, but there's different end goals here. Right. And there's different bottom lines. So he has that really unique experience of being in all those conversations and also working with families. There's not a lot of those folks out there, especially at the level that he's done it at. So that's why we wanted to have him on, share his expertise, and we collaborate behind the scenes a whole bunch, and we're always learning from him. I guarantee you I'm going to learn some things from him tonight that I didn't know before. And he's a great resource. He's going to be out there for those of you folks that have questions beyond tonight. Him and his company are just some folks that we lean on. Now he's here, and you're going to learn a lot tonight. So Fitz, why don't you just introduce yourself? And by the way, I'm up here in Boston. Fitz is a little bit warmer than I am, and some of us are down there in the South to an extent. But kind of tell us how you got here. Tell us a little bit about your journey before we jump into the content.
Well, thanks, Matt. It's great to be here with you. You mentioned leaning on me. I feel lucky in that I've had an opportunity to lean on College Aid Pro and you as well. And it's great to be with everybody tonight. So fun to see this large number of parents looking for expert advice on how to make college more affordable. And, you and I are both in this space because we want to do just that for families. And, very simply, my background, I worked in 3 different admissions offices, most recently at Vanderbilt University. And then after working in 3 highly selective admissions offices, I jumped into the consulting space. And in that consulting role, I worked with deans of admissions, directors of financial aid, vice presidents for enrollment management on their marketing strategies, as well as their financial aid modeling strategies. And spent 16 years doing that, working with, as you point out, a couple hundred colleges. And then more recently jumped into creating findtherightcollege.com as a means for trying to get more expert advice into families' hands so that they can make better college decisions and, quite frankly, make college more affordable for themselves, because that's so much of what's pulled me into the higher education space altogether. It's just a general belief that college will take you a long way. Matt, why don't we just jump in, if that's all right? Do you want to share a little bit more about your background before we dive into presentations?
If you'd be so kind. Just for those of you that I'm brand new to, and I think it's a mixed bag tonight, right? So my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm up here in the Boston area. And my journey in this whole ecosystem started about almost 17 years ago, not long after I graduated from college. I'm the oldest of 3. And my parents didn't know what the hell they were doing. God love them. They're worked their butts off, tried to do everything they could for their kids, and just said, hey, get into the best college you can. We'll figure it out. And we had amazing college experiences, but the financial end result wasn't the best, for all parties involved. Okay. So that was kind of the genesis, my experience, for a company that I started after I graduated called College Funding Services. That basically, I found out that wasn't a unique experience and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Right. And we slowly but surely started to figure that out and had some success and grew a little bit, specifically up here in the Northeast. And then, our biggest pain points were the fact that, number one, there was no reliable technology in the space. So it was a very high touch process, very difficult to scale. The other big pain point was the families that needed our help the most, they couldn't afford to work with us, right? And we've always been great in terms of our pro bono work, and we continue to be, but we didn't have a scalable solution that could help everybody, essentially. So finally, about 5 years ago, we threw our hands up and said, if we're going to do this the right way, we're going to have to do it ourselves. And that was the birth of College Aid Pro, essentially. So that's kind of where I am today. And I think, like my story, I think my mom texted me today. My mom retired last week or 2 weeks ago, 71 years old. She doesn't like me to share that. 71 years old. A lot of the reason she was taking the 5:30 a.m. train into Boston still as a 71-year-old is college. And she finally retired, right? And she asked if she could join tonight. So thank you, Mom, if you're in the crowd. But it's that's a real life example of how hard this is. And we're hoping to help families have better outcomes than so many people do. And if we do it at an individual level, help us at kind of the macro level. And those are the big ambitions that we have. And this is one of the opportunities that we have, is once we get these offers that usually we're not psyched about, how do we go back and do better? So Fitz, why don't you take us away, man?
Yeah, let's jump right in. And in the spirit of diving right in, you were talking about your mother and the long-term implications for the college funding decisions that your family made. Just so everybody knows, look, I'm a parent of 2 teens, so I get this moment that you're all working your way through right now too. I, like you, am anxious about college costs and trying to figure out every possible way that I can save on college, not just save for college. So a lot of what Matt and I will talk about tonight represent strategies for ways that collectively you all can save on college, right? If you've got a financial aid offer in hand, how do you make that better? And as we think about that fundamental question for our meeting this evening, I want to encourage everybody to unpack or throw away the old image that you might have of a quote unquote ivory tower culture on a college campus, right? That's gone. Today's colleges, they operate more and more like a business every single day. And the money that you will pay for your student to attend college funds what is usually the very largest sum of money that any college will receive in any given year, right? It funds their net tuition revenue. And so as we think about, the fact that these colleges are behaving more and more like businesses, I want to encourage you all to think about how you then fit into that, how your dollars fit into that. And what these sticker prices mean. I want you to think about how the sticker prices on these colleges seem so exorbitant today, but they're really misleading, right? Almost nobody today pays the full sticker price for a college. And we can see that very quickly in discount rates. At private colleges, discount rates today are now well over 50%. They were at 54% before the pandemic hit, according to NACUBO, which monitors private college discount rates. And I haven't seen the latest figures from them. They'll come out this spring, but due to the pandemic, I'm quite confident that discount rates are going to be way higher than that 54%. As we think about colleges behaving more and more like businesses, and click ahead, Matt, I'll point out that every single college has a different set of needs, right? These businesses, they're independent businesses, and these different businesses have different desires. And they have different strategies for trying to make their college an appealing choice. And before us here, we can see 4 different categories of dollars that colleges will in turn award to you in order to help you believe or possibly feel or even believe to be a reality that what the college will cost, right? So you've got grants, scholarships, work study, and loans as the 4 main buckets of funding that you can potentially receive. Now, as we think about those, I want to point out that grants and scholarships obviously are the most important, the most valuable. They're not going to stick with you in terms of 1, having your student need to work in college, or 2, taking out loans that will be burdensome to you or your student in the years beyond college. So of course, grants and scholarships are most appealing. And when we think about negotiating financial aid, I want to encourage you to not just think about how to improve the total sum of money being offered to you by the college, but I also want to encourage you to think about how to improve the number of dollars that fall into the grant or scholarship buckets, because those are, of course, the most appealing ones. Matt, what else do you think about when you think about these four main buckets of dollars for?
Well, I mean, to me, it's so I know some of this is this isn't the easiest stuff to see on the screen here, and I'll kind of bounce back and forth for a second here. But my big takeaways is the fact that one of the things that I had the biggest problem with is it's not a transparent process for the consumer, right? And almost every step of the way going through this, you're like, okay, what am I going to actually pay for this college? Am I going to qualify for financial aid? Am I going to get a scholarship? Where? How much? And then you actually get accepted into a school and you get an offer. You don't know what you're looking at, right? Like these are offers from this year, right? Like what what am I paying to go to the New Jersey Institute of Technology? And the other thing is here, there's about 500 different ways that colleges will give their offers. So it's not standardized at all, which makes it really, really difficult to know what am I actually paying, right? So before we even talk about negotiating for more money, first we have to know what's my net cost, right? Because that's where it can get really, really confusing, because as a general rule of thumb, with very few exceptions, part of every financial aid package is a loan, right? So we're seeing here this $5,500 federal government student loan, $3,500 of it is subsidized, $2,000 is unsubsidized. The big difference between the two, subsidized means it's not accruing any interest during the college years, and we get a 6-month buffer after graduation, whereas the meter starts running on the interest right away for the unsubsidized loan. Again, not common knowledge, we don't know. But the long and the short of it is it's a loan. We have to pay that money back, where oftentimes, again, it's usually presented as money, right? I'd be looking at this and kind of go, if I'm a parent that doesn't know the first thing about this process, which is most first-time parents, I'm just going right to this total. I got $43,000. Beautiful. Well, I guess, you know what? Good for you, Chicago. That is the case here. That actually is all free money. But again, a little bit confusing. It's articulated in what's that? 5 different ways, right? Which we'll talk about in a second here. Whereas you have this Lehigh offer, which I know is very difficult to see, but this is a great example of a really recent before and after. And if we kind of drill down here, we can see that the initial award included a total of $6,000 or thereabouts for each semester, but a lot of that was a part of a loan package. Work study program, basically a job, right? This is not money that comes directly off the bill. The total grant free money was about $3,000. So the takeaways here are a few things. Number one, we want to know what we're looking at. What is the bottom line? It's also really important to know what's the difference between a grant and a scholarship. Generally speaking, and to further complicate things, there's exceptions. But generally speaking, when we hear the word grant, we think that's based on my financial aid. That's based on my family's financial situation. And that could go up or down from one year to the next as things change. If income goes up and down, if a student, another sibling comes into college, exits college, whatever happens to be the case, that can change. And again, it's tied to the overall financial situation, where generally speaking, when we see the word scholarship or award, that means it's based on the student's credentials. And we can expect that to stay static for all 4 years, so long as, and again, there's usually so long as we maintain a minimum GPA and we're in school full time. Those are usually, and again, those actual metrics change from one school to the next and one scholarship to the next. So the takeaway is it's not simple. And we want to make sure that we get this right in terms of what am I actually looking at? What is the award? And ultimately, what's my net cost? What is my family going to have to pay out of pocket? Something that Fitz and I talked about before when we were in the green room, right? Before we jumped on live here, You know, we said a lot of folks make mistakes because they'll say, hey, University of Chicago, I got a $25,000 scholarship from Northwestern. You only gave me a $15,000 scholarship, but the net cost still might be better at the University of Chicago. We can't just look at the size of the scholarship, because then that argument's out the window, and they're just going to say, yep, they gave you a higher scholarship, we're giving you a better deal. This school,
You know, it's interesting, Matt, to just kind of pull on that thread a little bit farther and to emphasize why I think you're so smart to encourage families to focus on the out-of-pocket cost each year, is that the colleges have marketing strategies behind how they award these dollars, right? I mean, they're very clear marketing strategies, and you can get swept up in thinking, well, I got the presidential scholarship for $35,000. I've got to go there, even though it's that college may still cost you, as you just point out in your example, it may still cost you more than the school where you get the $15,000 scholarship. And it's really easy to get swept up in that marketing. And so focusing on out-of-pocket cost annually is exactly the right strategy. I think you're smart to emphasize that.
Yeah, and it's not. It's not
just
intuitive.
One more quick comment, and I'll point out, I also think it's really important for families to feel like they have license to talk to the colleges about year 2 and year 3 and year 4. What happens to this money in my sophomore year? What happens beyond my first year? You just talked about that, you know, that scenario and how it's not the same at every college. And I want to encourage the families with us tonight to feel like they have the license to absolutely inquire with the colleges about those year 2, 3, 4, and even 5 costs.
And it's a great point, because usually we're just all focused on what's 6 inches in front of our face. What's year 1 going to cost, right? As opposed to this is a 4-year, hopefully, experience. You know, let's make sure that we understand the whole deal before we make such a big commitment, right? Such a big investment. So, so one thing that we're trying to do to help folks, you know, avoid confusion is part of the platform allows you to upload your offers, right? And we'll translate them for you. Okay. So whatever school you want to put in here, you know, if we, you know, if you want to put in, all you have to do is put in the school, you upload the award letter, pick the file, and then you can manually put in the information or not, and then we'll fact check it on our end to make sure that you are in fact looking at the right numbers and be able to say that's correct. That bottom line at Stonehill, for example, and just an award letter I threw in here earlier, is a little bit over $34,000. Or not. Hey, you confused a grant with a loan, and actually here's the correct information. So, and this is available to anyone. So it's we just want to make sure that, again, we're providing transparency, and this is part of the process where that transparency component can be a little challenging, and we want to make sure that we're providing some value for folks there. So next piece here, and again, I know everybody wants to get to, okay, fine, how do we want more money, whatever it is, we want more money. And I promise we're gonna get there. We're gonna give you the whole playbook to the extent that we know it. But as I mentioned at the top, the first place that we want to start is this a good award for this school? Is this a good award? Did I get what everybody else kind of in mind that fits into my bucket, you know, comparable student, comparable family situation? Did I get a good award, right? And so again, and that's where we want to give you a fact check, you know, kind of a truth to say, is this reasonable? Now, even if it is, it doesn't mean we're not going to push back. We are probably, but let's make sure that we're at least within where we should be. Okay, we're at least being treated fairly, or mistakes happen too, right? A lot of human beings are behind putting together these financial aid packages, and it doesn't mean there was anything devious going on necessarily, but let's make sure that we start there. So just a little review for those of you that have followed us before. The first thing that everybody does, every college does, to determine a family's eligibility for need-based financial aid is that they take their sticker price, or the cost of attendance, they deduct your EFC, expected family contribution, And if there's a difference between those two figures, then you may be eligible for some need-based financial aid at that college. But every college is different in terms of their generosity or lack thereof. We want to take the guesswork out of that for you, right? So that's why what we do, again, this is kind of our main dashboard of the platform. But the first thing that we're showing anybody that gets that comes onto MyCap is what should the net cost be at the colleges that you're actually applying to, right? And we just put in I put in a random family here that had a lower income, lower assets, but we're trying to illustrate that we don't care what the sticker price of a college is. We care about the net cost, right? But just because the sticker price is similar and the family's financial situation is being presented the exact same way to all colleges, it doesn't mean that's going to be your bottom line at those colleges, right? Obviously, I'm highlighting Amherst versus NYU here, but we had a really good use case, on that slide that I showed you, and we can go back to it. We had a family that got an offer from Lehigh that was considerably less than it should have been, according to how they generally treat families, about $24,000 less. And that was the award they got. They applied early decision and they said, take it or leave it. And we said, wait a minute, this is not how you guys conduct business. They should have got $24,000 as an award. And lo and behold, they came back with $24,000, which was about 23 more than the initial offer. So again, it's great to have a resource that is speaking the truth here. So that's always our first recommendation is, put your colleges in that you're still considering, see what they actually should cost you, and then measure that versus the actual awards, which is generally more accurate than the net price calculator at colleges. And I guarantee way quicker than going through that exercise. So probably something that's worthwhile as these awards come in for your families. That's probably something that we would recommend. And again, why I've been bothering you to set up your accounts on MyCap as a first step here. Okay, before I kick it to Fitz here, should we always appeal? Is it ever a waste of time? Generally speaking, we should always appeal. I mean, the exceptions are so few that it's probably not worth spending too much time on tonight unless we have extra time at the end. Is it ever a waste of time? Probably. Sometimes we're probably spinning our wheels, and we can start there. Generally speaking, state schools, the flagship universities in particular, they operate under a very black and white formulaic process. It's almost like an extension of the federal government. It's like trying to argue with the federal government, right? And it is what it is. Whatever the numbers spit out, for better or for worse, that's the deal, right? And it's also a volume game. If that number doesn't work for you, they'll say, we'll take the 10,000 folks waiting in line behind you, right? It is not uncommon that when you go to plead your case with these financial aid folks, that they will say, our firm recommendation is that you do not go to this school, right? I mean, and they're not even necessarily being jerks. That's just the fact of the matter. And they're just trying to illustrate for you that the number is the number, and that's it. Now, there are exceptions if you've had some type of, God forbid situation, specifically since the time you completed the FAFSA or since your relevant tax returns a year. If something has happened in the relatively recent future, that could move the needle here. If you had a one-time distribution from a retirement account in a year that had your income spike significantly, that's something that can again move the needle. Or we've had a job loss, something like this. So unless we've had something very, very material, the expectation has to be at these schools, that's the deal. And it doesn't matter how strategic or eloquent we are in our pushback or negotiation. There's no magic wand, right? Now, almost everything else, let's talk about it, right? It's a conversation, and usually always, if it's a private college, we got a shot, and again, generally speaking here, and there's exceptions and all of that, but everything on the left-hand column is something that certainly I feel great. My confidence is high if we fit into one of these categories. You know, have we had a one-off retirement distribution? Now, I know a lot of folks, what we're seeing this year is that families that were unemployed, they were getting some unemployment income. And then we got this COVID rule from the IRS that said, hey, you can withdraw from your 401k penalty free. Great. I need that right now. That was great. But for financial aid purposes, that can really hurt your EFC, can really hurt your need-based financial aid eligibility, which you didn't do anything wrong. You had no clue. You weren't supposed to have a clue, but you would have got more money otherwise. But this would be something that we would want to specifically push back on with these colleges, to say this was a one-time deal. Here's why we had to do it. We should be based on everything else, right? Not this distribution that we had to take. It wasn't to buy, a houseboat, right? If we're divorced, if we're separated, if we're remarried, always something that another variable, another complexity here, something we want to push back on. Our most successful appeals, and we'll kind of talk about the ranges tonight, but we've had some insanely successful appeals. I think our largest one was like $47,000, something like that. Now, again, that's the exception. That's not the rule. But how it happened, and all our huge ones, just about how they happen, is schools that use the federal or institutional methodologies, and I'm nerding out a little bit here, but basically a lot of these prestigious private schools, and it's all in our system here that says what platform they use, they're not supposed to count the income and the assets of step parents. Now, if the student lives with biological mom and the new step parent, right, that's a step parent that is not biological, the federal formula will count that. It doesn't matter that they're not a biological parent. If they're in the custodial household, that counts. It's fair game, their income, their assets. But if it's a step parent, those private schools, institutional and consensus methodology schools, they're not supposed to count that income or assets, and oftentimes they do. So that is something, and I know I'm getting kind of granular and probably sound like I'm speaking a different language here, but you want to look closely at that if you're a family that fits into that category. And these are just some other ones too, where we feel great. If we're a business owner, that's always something we want to challenge. How do they value our business? What write-offs did they not count? And of course, if we applied to competing colleges and got better offers, that's something that we want to bring to the table. So just kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit from an expectation standpoint, and Fitz, you can drill down a little bit further, and I'll shut up for a little bit here.
Well, Matt, while you were talking and you kept referencing pushing back, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here and understanding what Matt means by pushing back. By pushing back, we're essentially just referring to the process of formally appealing what you've been offered. And I think that's a really important just clarification point. So as we think about when might it be worth it to appeal, and how do we assess our chances? First, I want to encourage everybody to go back to, for those of you who have seniors, to go back to what you were probably working your way through a year ago at this time, where you were looking at your students' academic credentials, and you were trying to figure out how those credentials compared to the profile of the admitted students in the entering class of X college versus Y college versus Z college. And many colleges talk about their mid 50% band with regard to GPAs and SAT or ACT scores. And I want to encourage everybody to think about where your student falls within that mid 50% band with regard to GPAs, SATs, or ACTs, or all three. Now, if you're below that mid 50%, your chances of being successful in the appeal process tend to be much lower. If you're in the heart of it, you've got a decent shot. If you're up high in the above the mid 50% profile, I think your chances for an appeal oftentimes are stronger. So think about where your student fits in the academic profile of the entering class of the college that you're interested in appealing your financial aid offer to. Now, Matt already talked about how many public colleges are less inclined to sort of go through, even welcome appeals. Many of these super elite colleges think Ivy League, MIT, Stanford, Duke, those types of places, they tend to be pretty darn reluctant to negotiate their price points. But I will tell you, those types of schools are doing things today that they never considered doing 10 years ago. And so are many of the other sort of upper echelon schools. And so what I want to encourage everybody with us tonight to think about is, even if you had a child go through this 5 years ago, you had a child go through this even 3 years ago, the circumstances today are likely quite different. This marketplace is changing very quickly. Discount rates are soaring, and all types of colleges are becoming more and more inclined, even those that are reluctant, the public schools in particular, the flagship public schools, even those schools are starting to move into a position where they're tolerant of or willing to consider appeals. Now, when you're looking at the schools that you're considering, I want to encourage everybody to think about College Aid Pro and one particular resource that they have. They have on their sites, when you look up the individual colleges, they have one data point that provides information about how much non-need-based aid a school provides. If you see a big number there for a college that you're considering, I want to encourage you to recognize that that's a school where you have a better chance for having a successful appeal than one that does not. Similarly, if you can get in touch with the college that you're considering and find out what their discount rate is, if you and your financial aid package are set up in such a way that you are expected to pay more than the average student, then I think you're in a good position to potentially have a successful appeal. Okay, so what do I mean by the average student? If the college costs $40,000 and on average, the whole first year class pays $20,000, then that discount rate for that particular college would be 50%. Okay, so discount rate is the average amount paid by the average family in the entering class. So if you, in this hypothetical university, are expected to pay $30,000 when the average family in that class is only paying $20,000, then I think you're in a better position to appeal your award than if you were only expected to pay $10,000. Okay? It's a little bit nuanced and tricky, but it's a good signal for evaluating your chances for a successful appeal and figuring out whether or not it's worth it to do it. The other thing that's really important with regard to figuring out whether or not this is worth it is that your chances for a successful appeal kind of fall off a cliff. Not to seem extremist, but they fall off a cliff if you try to negotiate after May 1st. You're much more likely to be successful in negotiating before May 1. Now, I saw a couple questions come through, Matt, and I want to just quickly note one thing. There may be some senior families with us tonight that have not completed the FAFSA yet. And if anyone on in this meeting tonight hasn't submitted their FAFSA yet, I want to encourage you to do so very quickly. The sooner you get that done, the better off you're going to be. And for the families of younger students, juniors and below, I want to encourage you to know that the FAFSA goes live on October 1st of your student's senior year. And you will be advantaged by completing that FAFSA as soon as you can after October 1. Students who complete, or families that complete the FAFSA, and students who submit applications earlier, I believe, gain huge advantages in this process. There are almost no disadvantages to submitting those forms, the FAFSA or the applications, earlier. One person asked whether or not you can still appeal a financial aid offer when you've applied early decision. And the answer is yes. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. Early decision does tend to have some disadvantages because on the financial side, because you are saying, I'm going to come no matter what if I've applied early decision. And while that's the case, you still have the opportunity to appeal a financial aid offer if you've applied early decision.
Fitz, you gave me a window to plug the program a little bit here. So for those of you that have not submitted the FAFSA CSS profile, we have line-by-line instructions in here and on-demand courses, live courses, because there are some big do's and don'ts, right? We get a lot of folks that even sophisticated folks that are reporting their retirement assets on the FAFSA, huge no-no, or are reporting their 529 savings as a student asset, huge no-no. So diversion from what we're talking about here tonight, but there can be some mission critical mistakes that amazing amounts of families make. And again, that's not an indictment on them. That's an indictment on how unnecessarily complex this system can be at times. But yeah, I just wanted to share that quickly. And sorry if I'm.
No, that's great.
Let me bring our presentation up here, buddy. Okay.
So as we pivot into thinking about the process, I want to encourage everybody to sort of envision guideposts, right? Because there are certain things that I would consider no-nos in the world of appealing financial aid. We've talked about how you can assess your chances, but let's talk about implementation here. Let's remember, and you can tell I used to work at a college when I say this, they're humans who are working at these colleges. And I want to encourage you to stay respectful of those people working in the colleges, whether you're talking to somebody in the admissions office or in a financial aid office. I can tell you that that getting angry and raising your voice and showing some level of disrespect toward these individuals can hurt you. And so no matter how frustrated you get, please remember that staying respectful and staying on top of everything that the college representatives ask you to do and doing that promptly will work in your favor. It will also work in your favor to demonstrate your interest. Now, a lot of folks hear about demonstrated interest as a way to exhibit to the colleges that you want to go if you're admitted. And many people in this space talk about the importance of demonstrated interest before the admissions letter comes through. I want everyone with us tonight to understand that it does not stop there, right? If you show that you're very interested in having your child go to a particular college and you demonstrate that very clearly, you say, or my child will enroll if we can improve this offer. If you make that plain, make that obvious, then the college is more likely to give you the money that you request. Okay. The other thing that colleges are more likely to do with regard to fielding your appeals is they're more likely to listen if they know you've got a bunch of good choices. Okay. So what does that mean? If you've been admitted to Harvard and a community college, and the community college is only going to cost $200 a semester, it's not going to help you to tell Harvard that you can go to the community college for $200. But if you have two very similar institutions, or better yet, multiple similar institutions, a whole group of, for instance, top 50 small private liberal arts colleges, if you've got admit offers from a collection of those schools and you receive varying levels of financial support from them, you can improve, in many instances, the offer that you receive by showing the different colleges the offers that you've received. Okay, so make sure that you tell the college that you want your child to attend that you've got other offers. Make sure that you then are prepared to show those competing offers, and know that that's going to be the best position you can find your way into. Now, at four-year private colleges, oftentimes we see good four-year graduation rates. At many public universities, we see much lower four-year graduation rates. When you're thinking about your costs, Matt was smart in encouraging us all to be mindful of annual out-of-pocket costs. And as we think about annual out-of-pocket costs, especially at public schools, as you're evaluating your cost and thinking about the appeal process, I want you to be mindful of the fact that a fifth or maybe even a sixth year is a very real possibility at many colleges in this country. So be mindful of that. And in thinking along those lines, be mindful of this circles back around to something that I said earlier in our meeting. Be mindful of asking the colleges where you've applied, where you've received your offers. Ask them about what happens to your award in year 2, 3, 4, and as it relates to this point I'm making, what happens in year 5? It's very important, and many families hit snags along the way and end up sadly having to withdraw their student from a college because the cost gets unreasonable in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. When you're dealing with these admissions officers or financial aid officers, I want to encourage you to be mindful of trying to reach out to the appropriate office. Okay, if you are looking at a merit award, a scholarship, is more appropriate to talk to admissions. If you are looking at a need-based financial aid award, it is more appropriate to talk to the financial aid office. Now, in some colleges, people are prepared to talk about both, but as you get onto the phone with these folks, try to direct yourself into the appropriate office according to what you want to discuss, the merit aid or the need-based aid. I do mention phone. One thing that I would encourage everybody to do is to think about communicating with these college professionals through multiple channels. Okay, it can be much more effective to have a telephone call and then follow up with a formal email, or to follow up with a formal letter. Matt, would you, from your vantage point, would you add any other key points with regard to thinking about these guideposts for success?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll piggyback on that as we kind of get into the X's and O's and the nitty gritty of like, okay, it's kind of game time. What are we doing here, right? And the first question you got to answer is what you just hit on: who should we appeal to, right? And sometimes the answer is admissions. Sometimes it's financial aid. It's not uncommon at all that it's both, right? And as you were saying that, it reminded me of something that stuck with me. That I heard for the first time. Yeah, it's probably, I guess, 5 years ago now, and I've heard it a few times since. But Brian Ford, who's a part of our team, he's been in missions for his entire career, and again, similar to Fitz, and then he's been on both sides of the fence and worked at colleges and as a high school college counselor and private in the private sector. And he tells this great story, and he has a few examples, but he was at BU, Boston University, and a pretty competitive school, and it was kind of, they were down to having to make these really hard decisions, the worst part of his job. And, which we have to make a decision here, which student, which family do we accept? And they're both equally great. And, everything's equal from what they can tell. And they're really just like almost at let's flip a coin type of deal. Right. And they're going around to all the different admissions counselors talking about, is there any, any opinions here? Did anybody have any interactions? And for this particular student, Brian had met with him. He'd met with each of these students, a couple of times. Had some nice rapport with both of them. Really impressed with both of them. But one of the students, after their visit, put a handwritten thank you note in the mail to Brian. Right, and that is what really stood out. Now, again, is that going to make or break anything? In that case, it did. Right, and I'm sure that's the exception rather than the rule. But that was interesting to me, especially. It's so competitive sometimes, and they're right there in the mix, and what can be a differentiator. And I'm like, yeah, wow, there's got to be not a huge percentage of 16, 17, 18-year-olds here in 2022 that are sending handwritten notes to the admissions counselor. And again, in this case, and I've heard it more than once, it was one of the things that they kind of put them over the hump. So that was interesting.
Sure. Matt, if you don't mind, I might piggyback on that and share with everybody. I think conventionally, the popular press today, when we talk about college admissions, everybody focuses on, do I get in or not? And the reality is that in the college admissions process, there are countless fences that an applicant will actually sit on, right? Yes, do you get in or do you not is one question. Are you on the wait list? Are you high on the wait list? Are you low on the wait list? Then if you're in the admit pool, what category do you fall into in the financial aid model, right? There are colleges and universities that have financial aid models with up to different cells that they are trying to put all of their applicants into in order to identify how generous a financial aid offer a particular student will fall into. And think about all those different fence sitting moments that your student might might sit on. And then remember sort of my general guidepost counsel, which is stay respectful, demonstrate your interest, because you never know where your student might be sitting on a fence and whether or not your behavior in this process might help nudge them onto the positive side rather than the negative side of that fence.
Yeah, it's a great call. Absolutely great call. So we're at game time here, right? So we got our award. We understand what our award says. We understand our out-of-pocket net cost. Now, how do we go back and get more money from this college? Now, of course, there is no one size fits all. No pun intended there. But so it is an individual basis, but we do want to be cognizant. Are we asking for more scholarships? That's the admissions office, specifically our admissions counselor. If there's been a report at the college, we want to leverage that relationship like Fitz talked about. If it's more of a financial component, that's the financial aid office, right? And if we're not sure, or if we think we could be on both sides of the fence, let's have the conversation with both. And it's not uncommon at all that, especially if the student has had a rapport with their admissions counselor, even if it's a completely a financial aid appeal that we're making, we still want the student to communicate that with their admissions counselor to say, hey, listen, my parent or my parents are on the front lines because there was something going on with their business and that they didn't think it was or we can't make this happen financially, but I want you to know, and just as someone that seems to be an advocate for me, anything you can do on your end, that's great. Right. I mean, we've been able to leverage those relationships many times, even if it wasn't a direct line for the specific ask in the appeal. Right. So again, any advocate we can have on that side of the fence, we want to make sure that we take advantage of that. Right now, this kind of 5-point plan here, it's something that we put together, not just with years of experience. We've done this tens of thousands of times over many years here, but also we have actual financial aid counselors that work with us currently, that have worked with us previously, that used to work at colleges, that still work at colleges. So there's a nice collaboration here of folks in all different parts of this process, right? And some of them might be completely intuitive, but I think they're good to get reinforcement. Some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about, I have a feeling is not necessarily common knowledge. So without further ado, the first thing here is, and this is something that always gets hammered home to us for one of our advisors, Ryan Callie, and he's a director of financial aid at Harvard Medical School. And he would always talk about the fact that, when he worked in the financial aid office, it was just about the numbers. They just get the family's FAFSA, CSS profile, supporting tax returns. They don't see the essay. They don't know that this is the first student in this family's history to go to college. They don't know that the best day of their life was getting the acceptance letter, and the worst day of their life was 2 weeks after getting the financial aid award letter. Right? That's not a part of their experience. They're crunching numbers, and they're trying to make a profitable operation for their employer, right? And that's kind of their deal. And it's easy to make maybe not the most generous offer when it's not a human experience, right? Again, it's just an application. I put them through the formula and there you go. It makes it so much harder to get that phone call, to have that in-person meeting, to get that letter that elaborates on just that. This is how it played out for our family. And as much as we'd like to make this happen for our kid, and we'll do anything for our kid, and they're willing to sacrifice and borrow themselves, we just feel like this would be reckless if we accepted this offer, as much as it breaks our heart to think about having to turn it down, right? We want to bring that human element into the discussion, and then let's make their jobs a little bit easier. Let's not make it abstract. How far away are we here? Right. And let's not be ridiculous. You heard me throw out some insane numbers, 40,000 and even 22,000, that offer that I talked about that just happened in the last couple of weeks here. That is again, those are the exceptions here, right? Generally speaking, what we're looking for, we're looking to get $5,000. That's our intention. And I know a lot of people hear that, that's a drop in the bucket. Well, that's $5,000 times 4 years. That's $20,000 tax free, right? So let's not dismiss anything here. And again, there's unique. That's not the ask for everybody. Like I said, this is not a one size fits all. But generally speaking, even if we get a good offer, our mentality is let's go do $20,000 better. Right. And again, sometimes the ask is a lot more than that. And sometimes we find anomalies or unique opportunities, which I'll hit on in a second here. But to set some realistic expectations for folks, that would be kind of the ballpark that I would give you. Right. So I want to go to these folks and say, listen, we've crunched the numbers. We've done our homework on our end. If you're able to come back with $7,000 more, it's still going to be a huge stretch, but we can make that happen. Right. Give them something tangible to work with so they can go to their team, go to their committee, go to the director and say, hey, here's how far apart I think we are. And again, you're making their jobs easier than to just say, we want more money, give us $50,000. Right. I mean, this is something that, again, we've seen has maximized odds of being successful. And like we probably both talked about, we want to have competing offers. Right. We want to have competing schools. I saw one of the questions in the Q&A it was 2 state schools. I want to say it was Kentucky and Tennessee. Can we pit them against one another? They're absolutely competing schools, but that goes back to the state colleges, right? It's usually an exercise in futility with these big state flagship universities, unless we have something really, really tangible outside of, well, if you don't match Kentucky or you don't match Tennessee, then you're going to lose me to their rival. Unfortunately, as the consumers here, we just have less leverage. Now, that doesn't mean don't do it, go do it. The worst they can tell you is, no, we did the best we can. Every year we see successful results that we would typically bet against. So absolutely try it. But again, we're just trying to set some expectations here. Okay. Now here's one that, again, I think is the most kind of PhD level appeal that generally applies, or one of them that generally applies to business owners. Okay. And something, kind of these little known secrets that we came to find out, many years ago, was the fact that a lot of these private colleges specifically, they want your tax returns. It's not really oftentimes to verify what you put on the financial aid applications. It's specifically to dive into your expenses, and they want to make some determinations of your own. So if you're a business owner and you have depreciation on property, or you wrote your truck off for $10,000, they might go in there and say, depreciation, no, we're not counting that. So that $20,000 in depreciation is now going to be untaxed income. You wrote your truck off for 10. The IRS bought that. We only think it was 5 was reasonable. These are things that they can do. These are private colleges. These are businesses, like Fitz said at the top here. They can do whatever the hell they want, but this is a great place to challenge them. Especially if you feel like the award is not adding up, if MyCap projections are off from what you got and you're a business owner, you want to make the direct ask. Did you all not count some of the expenses that the IRS counted on their tax returns? They're obligated to answer that question truthfully. In my experience, they typically do, right? And at least it's a conversation. But those are some of the things that we want to be aware of. Some of our most prestigious colleges in the country, we've known them to, listen, Cornell doesn't need my help, and I'm not picking on Cornell. They're a world-class institution. They are by no means alone in this. They just came top of mind, and whatever came out of my mouth. But their policy oftentimes for business owners, if you show a loss, they just put a plus line there, right? You had a business loss of $200,000. Your AGI is negative $200,000. We think it's plus $200,000, and we're going to award you accordingly. So, these are some of the things that, again, especially as we're a business owner, we want to be all over and really challenge. Get in there, Fitz.
I think I would add, as you think about number 1 and number 4 on this, the circumstances around the pandemic have sort of intensified the number of cases that all of us are dealing with. And I think being mindful of how the pandemic has significantly changed your circumstances, whether that includes changes to the education needs of other children that you're financially responsible for, the changes in your employment circumstances, how your business or your employer has taken it on the chin as a result of the changes in the economy. Number 1 and number 4 are really important in these times that we're living through now. They've always been important, but boy, in the last 18 months, it's like the importance of this piece of it is just skyrocketing.
100%. It's a great call. A question I'm answering here, I'm just typing away, but it's a relevant one that some of these oftentimes, and you have to expect that when you have other offers to show, colleges will require that we see them. They're not necessarily, or it's rare, going to take you at face value. Do you have to show them? You don't have to show them, but you have to expect their answer to be, we can't move the award based on what you're telling us it is. We need to see it if you want to move the needle, if we're going to consider that. So, sorry, Fitz,
I was just going to say, Matt, while you finished typing that particular thing, I would say that with regard to number 5, it relates back to something I had already talked about, and that is being persistent, demonstrating your interest. If your student wants to go to a particular college and money is the only barrier, make sure you tell the college that, right? These colleges hate to have students that they've admitted not enrolled, right? These colleges that you're dealing with are measured by their yield rates. Yield rates are very important. Yield rates are the rate at which admitted students choose to enroll. And every college wants their yield rate to be as high as possible. So if you tell a college that your child will enroll if the money comes through, then correspondingly, they're more likely to offer that money because they want high yield rates. And so your persistence and your demonstration of your interest, especially if you can say unequivocally, this is my top choice school, will make a difference, or at least can make a difference.
100%. Let's see. So another question, and I don't think I was very clear here, so I'm glad it got asked because I've talked around it. But so who should appeal, the student or the parent, right? And it somewhat depends. Generally speaking, and we found this especially in recent years, that 5 years ago, nobody knew that it was possible to even appeal. Is just take it or leave it type of deal. And that's still a lot of common knowledge because that's certainly how it's presented, right? I mean, Fitz and I have both been waiting for years to get that award letter that says, here's what we're offering. If this isn't enough money, please give us a call and, we're going to make you whole, right? That's not how it's presented. This is the deal, take it or leave it, right? But in terms of parents or students, we found that, again, especially the last couple of years, to have the student be a part of this conversation that shows a tangible impact. That's who the college is investing in ultimately, right? And I think it shows, and this is the feedback we've got from the colleges, that like we see that this kid is on the front lines having an adult conversation, even if it's an email, even if it's a letter. They understand 16, 17, 18-year-olds most are not comfortable picking up the phone and having this type of super adult conversation. But to have them involved at any point, even if it's to just say how much they want to go to that school and what they think they're going to bring and how invested they are, that can absolutely have an impact. So with few exceptions, we always recommend that to the extent the students are comfortable, get them involved. Oftentimes it makes sense for the parents to also do it, right? And if it's something that's really granular on the financial side, then it's the parents are going to lead that conversation, right? If we're talking about something that's typically going on with the business, right? And really, hey, we're challenging depreciation or certain write-offs, or, that makes sense to be led by the business owner, right? By the parent. If it's something that has to do with an unpleasant divorce and the two households not on the same page, oftentimes that's going to be easier for the parent to drive that conversation, unless it's the student that wants to, right? Because they're experiencing the fallout of that. But again, I think it always makes sense to some extent to have the students involved, even if it's the parents that are driving that financial conversation part of it with the financial aid office. Okay. So again, that's a big one there. The challenging the tax returns and not letting colleges get away with that, for lack of a better term there. Last one, good old fashioned persistence, right? Now, Fitz kind of let us off tonight and said, listen, don't be jerks, right? You want to hopefully have a relationship with these folks for 4 years. You want to get them motivated, right? You want them coming from the place of, I want to make it happen for this kid. This parent is trying to make it happen for this kid. I can tell that. That's everything that's coming through. This kid's trying to make it happen for them. I want to be part of that. I want to be a part of, like, let me get a reward out of my job, right? We want them coming from that place, but we still got to be persistent. There is still an element of, shit, if I can make these parents not talk to me again by giving them $5,000, we all won, right? Like, we have our offices, our brick and mortar offices. We have one up here in Boston. We have another one just south of Manhattan in North Jersey. We keep all of our favorite voicemails, right? And they're all similar. It'll be, Mr. Carpenter, this is so-and-so calling from Northeastern University. We're happy to tell you, we're going to be able to come up with another $8,000 for you guys. Only thing we ask in return is that you never call here again, right? All something to that extent. Now, again, nobody's being impolite or anything like that, but the persistence, tried and true negotiating tactic, and it bears fruit sometimes. So obviously everybody has a unique situation. Every school is different. Every family is different, right? One of the things that we're offering, and I'm going to put it in the chat here, however I can do that. So what we do, and this is how we think is the best way to leverage our expertise right now, is we offer a 1-hour strategy session. Okay. And right now, especially for 2022 families, it's really focused on this piece, the appeal. We charge $299. You have a discount code there that gets you 15% off, whatever that is. So about $45 off, thereabouts. With that, we're going to focus on the appeal. And then you have access to our technology and all the bells and whistles for a year. So it's not cheap, but when we look at what's at stake here, in my opinion, it's an amazing opportunity to see a great return on the investment. So we're going to send you a follow-up tomorrow, but that's the link where you can book your session right now with our team. We'll get on the phone. So we've had a lot of success this year. We had an awesome one with Santa Clara just last week, where we just got on the phone with the client, spoke directly with the financial aid office collectively, and they came up with, and again, this is a big number, $10,000 more in the initial offer, right? And we can document that. And again, that's not a promise we're making, but we feel really good that we're going to maximize your odds of having a successful appeal. And again, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, whatever's keeping you up at night, but if you want our input on award letters, you want us to write the award letters outside of the color commentary that you're going to put on there. We've been doing this collectively for over 50 years. We've done this tens of thousands of times over. There's really not a college we haven't worked with, and we have an awesome network that we can leverage. So I know that I don't want to obviously push anybody, but that's something you'll want to consider. If you just want to use the technology itself and all the bells and whistles, again, everybody has this coupon code that they can take advantage of. And then make sure that we're doing another event with on February 10th that's really focused on the private scholarships type that again, keep a lookout for. And then I want to make sure that, so that's on the College Aid Pro side of things, but I want to make sure that you all have access to Fitz moving forward. As you can see, he has a wealth of knowledge. He's done this many times over. So you know where to find his group as well. And Fitz, if you want to add anything outside of where folks can find you, please do so.
Well, I do want to point that out to everybody, but I also want to thank you, Matt, for letting me join you tonight. This has been really interesting. And, I've got a couple partners. We've got over 60 years of experience in this admissions and financial aid space. And, we're really on a mission to try and get more expert advice into more families' hands. And we have a free webinar that you can access by going to our website, findtherightcollege.com. Findtherightcollege.com. Shouldn't be too hard to remember. We're called Find the Right College after all. But if you go to our website, you can sign up for a webinar called 7 Mistakes That Too Many Families Make in Selecting the Right College. Basically, my partners and I have identified 7 things that we unfortunately have just seen over and over again that lead 7 mistakes that lead toward bad college decisions. And so what's fun is that as everybody was signing in and adding their comments to the chat at the start of our gathering tonight, I noticed that there are a lot of parents of younger students. And I'll point out that this would be a great webinar for any parents of high school students. So I hope you'll take this opportunity to go to our website, findtherightcollege.com, and sign up for the webinar. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I mean, I had some fun. I learned a lot as always, and we can hammer out probably a couple more questions here. Again, tomorrow, just for everybody's knowledge here, everybody is going to get, you'll get the recording, you'll get the slides. You'll be, you'll know where to find Fitz and I and how to interact with us or interface with us moving forward if you choose to at all. And again, I put that link in the chat. I'll put it in there again in terms of if anybody wants to book hours with our team, now's the time to do that. And those things we do have our limits there. So now is a good time, especially if you're a class 2022 parent. And the other way that you can do that is once you're logged into MyCap, at any time, if you go to upgrade, you can just book an hour with us here. So that's just another way that you can do that. And hopefully that's helpful for you all. And, again, obviously we're running businesses here, but we're trying to help you all have successful end results. Right. And so that's the big thing here, right? We're trying to kind of one webinar at a time, trying to change this whole system at large, and we're still on the front lines doing it. And I don't think we'll stop until we move that needle, and we still got a little bit of work left, Fitz, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, right? The retention rates haven't improved in the last 50 years by much at all, right? Only about 1 in 2 students will graduate from the college where they enroll. And a lot of the stories behind dropping out relate to money. And so, yes, Matt, as you say, we're running businesses, but both of us are very much in this. The common ground is that we're on a mission to make college more affordable because these sticker prices are crazy.
That's it. That's absolutely it. So yeah, hopefully everybody got something out of tonight. Apologies. I wish we could get to every single question. That's always our goal, but we just had volume tonight that didn't make that possible with just the 2 of us. But again, we're not going anywhere. You know where to find us. Let's see. I got another question for the coupon code, which we will share tomorrow, but let me just see what that is while I get the question here.
FTRC 2022.
There we go. So it's Find the Right College 2022. So you put that in on your checkout. And another thing I didn't mention, guys, that even if you don't engage with us, even if you don't do a paid version of the tech, we have live office hours every other Monday through our academy here. Our community is moderated by our experts. So there's still a lot of ways to get some access, I guess, and questions answered moving forward, again, regardless how you decide to work with us. Fitz, man, I had some fun. We'll do it again.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Good night, everybody.